reborn for vengeance. The night air was cold, carrying the scent of damp earth and betrayal. She stood on the edge of the rooftop, her chest rising and falling rapidly as she struggled to comprehend the reality before her. The two people she had loved most in this world stood opposite her. Their faces illuminated by the dim city lights, her husband Ryan and her best friend Selena. Ryan's lips curled into a slow, cruel smirk. "You never really thought I loved you, did you?" His voice was calm, almost amused. Selena took a step forward, the clicking of her heels echoing in the silence. "Darling, don't look so heartbroken," she cooed, her tone dripping with mock sympathy. "You were just in the way." Her heartbeat pounded in her ears. The weight of their betrayal settled over her like an iron chain, suffocating, inescapable. She had built her life around these two people. She had trusted them with everything, and they had destroyed her. Her fingers clenched into fists. "Why?" The word came out as a whisper, raw with agony. Ryan sighed, as if her pain was nothing more than a mild inconvenience. "Because you were useful, until you weren't." Selena tilted her head, smiling like a predator that had finally trapped its prey. "And now, you're just a loose end." Before she could react, strong hands shoved her backward. The world tilted, the rooftop vanishing as she plummeted into the abyss. The wind howled around her, her screams swallowed by the endless darkness, and then, nothing. The pain came first. Sharp, searing pain that spread through her entire body like wildfire. She gasped, her lungs burning as if she had been suffocating. Her eyes fluttered open, and she was met with the soft glow of candlelight. The scent of old wood and fresh flowers filled the air, familiar yet distant. Her fingers trembled as they gripped the silk sheets beneath her. This room. Her breath hitched. This was her bedroom, but that wasn't possible. Her heart pounded as she sat up, her hands flying to her body. No broken bones, no blood. Her skin was smooth, unscarred. She stumbled toward the mirror in the corner of the room. The face staring back at her was younger, her face, but before the pain, before the betrayal. It took a moment for her mind to piece it together. She had died, and yet here she was, alive, back in time. Her hands curled into fists, nails digging into her palm. Fate had given her a second chance. This time, she would not be the fool who blindly loved. This time, she would be the one to destroy them. The morning sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting golden hues across the room. She sat by the vanity, brushing her hair, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts. 3 years. That's how long she had before the betrayal. 3 years to prepare. Ryan entered the room, his expression warm, his touch gentle as he leaned down to kiss her forehead. "You're up early," he murmured. She forced a soft smile, suppressing the rage that bubbled beneath the surface. The same man who would one day throw her away like she was nothing was standing before her, acting like the perfect husband. For now, she had to pretend. "I couldn't sleep," she said sweetly. Ryan cupped her chin, his eyes filled with something that once would have made her heart flutter. But now she saw the truth. He had never loved her. Selena arrived soon after, her voice as bright and cheerful as ever. "Good morning, gorgeous." She turned to face the woman who had stabbed her in the back. Selena's smile was wide, her eyes full of warmth. A mask. Everything about her had been a lie, but this time she wouldn't fall for it. This time she would play the game better. She smiled back, her expression unreadable. "Good morning, Selena." Selena took a seat beside her, reaching for her hand. "You seem different today. Happier." She laughed lightly, the sound smooth and effortless. Everything is just falling into place. And for the first time, she wasn't lying, because this time she was in control. And her revenge had only just begun. The air was crisp, the early morning light barely breaking through the heavy curtains of her bedroom. She stood before the mirror, running her fingers along the smooth skin of her face. No scars, no wounds, no broken bones. A second chance. Her lips curled into a slow, calculating smile. Fate had rewritten her story, giving her a chance to change everything. She had spent her last life blindly loving those who had only seen her as a pawn. Not this time. This time, she would be the one holding the knife. She stepped away from the mirror, smoothing the silk of her gown. Today would mark the beginning of her carefully laid out plan. She had 3 years before Ryan and Selena's betrayal. 3 years to destroy them first. Ryan greeted her at breakfast with a warm smile, the same one that had once made her feel safe. Now it only made her stomach churn with disgust. "Did you sleep well, love?" he asked, pouring her a cup of tea. She accepted the cup, fingers tightening around the porcelain. She could still remember the way his hands had pushed her from that rooftop, his face devoid of regret. But today, she simply smiled. "I slept wonderfully." His eyes studied her for a moment. "You seem different lately. Happier." She took a slow sip of her tea, relishing the irony. "I just feel free." Selena arrived shortly after, her laughter filling the room as she embraced her like a loving sister. "Darling, I've been dying to tell you," Selena gushed, sliding into the chair beside her. "Ryan and I have planned a wonderful gathering tonight. Just a small, intimate party for close friends." A party? She remembered it now. This was the night they would introduce the first stage of their plan. The slow poisoning of her wealth and reputation. In her past life, she had been oblivious to their schemes. But this time, she was prepared. "That sounds delightful," she said smoothly. Ryan reached for her hand across the table, squeezing it gently. "I knew you'd love it." She fought the urge to recoil. "Soon, Ryan. Soon you'll learn what it means to be played." The evening arrived faster than she expected. The grand hall was decorated beautifully, the golden chandeliers casting warm light over the polished marble floors. Guests arrived in their finest attire, laughing and drinking as music played in the background. She moved through the crowd with effortless grace, exchanging pleasantries, smiling at the right moments. Every move was calculated. Every word was a piece of the game she was orchestrating. Ryan and Selena were the stars of the night, laughing and mingling, reveling in their own perfection. She watched them from across the room, her fingers tightening around the glass of wine in her hand. In her past life, this night had marked the beginning of her downfall. Tonight, it would be theirs. A waiter passed by, and she placed a small, unnoticeable vial into the drink, meant for Ryan. A harmless substance, nothing deadly, just enough to make him feel off, enough to make him question his surroundings. She carried on, weaving through the crowd effortlessly. She approached a nobleman, someone Ryan had always sought favour with. "Lord Halstead," she greeted, her voice sweet as honey. He turned, surprised but pleased. "Lady Evelyn, you look radiant tonight." She smiled, tilting her head slightly. "I'm so glad you could come. I heard that Ryan has been seeking your investment for a business venture." The nobleman chuckled. "Yes, though I must admit I'm hesitant. Business should always be conducted with trust, don't you think?" She leaned in slightly. "Indeed, trust is everything." She let the words hang in the air, watching as a flicker of doubt passed over his face. A seed planted. Ryan would struggle in the coming days, his carefully laid plans already beginning to crack. She turned away, satisfied, just in time to see Ryan stagger slightly. His hand gripped the table for support, his brow furrowed. "Perfect." Selena rushed to his side, concern etched on her face. "Ryan, are you all right?" Ryan shook his head as if trying to clear his mind. I just feel strange." She took a slow sip of her wine, watching as panic flickered in Ryan's eyes. "Perhaps you should sit down," she suggested sweetly. "You must have had too much to drink." Ryan looked at her, his gaze searching. For the first time, doubt clouded his perfect confidence. The game had begun, and she was winning. As the night ended and the guests began to leave, she stood by the balcony, looking down at the city below. The cool air brushed against her skin, carrying with it the whispers of the past. Ryan approached, his steps slightly unsteady. "You've been different lately," he murmured. She turned to face him, her expression unreadable. "Have I?" He studied her for a long moment. "It's like you've changed overnight." She stepped closer, tilting her head. "Tell me, Ryan," she whispered, her voice dangerously soft. "If I changed, would that be a bad thing?" Ryan blinked, something uneasy flashing in his eyes. For the first time, he couldn't read her. She smiled, and that terrified him. This was only the beginning. The night was quiet, but her mind was anything but. She stood near the window of her chamber, staring at the city bathed in moonlight. A deep sense of satisfaction curled within her chest. Ryan had felt it, the fear. It had been subtle, just a flicker in his eyes, but it was there. She was no longer the woman he thought he could manipulate. He just didn't know it yet. A soft knock on the door broke her thoughts. "Come in," she called, schooling her features into calmness. The door opened and her maid, Elise, stepped in, her hands clasped nervously. "My lady, I heard something disturbing." She turned, raising an eyebrow. "Go on." Elise hesitated before whispering, "Lord Ryan met with a man in secret tonight. I couldn't hear everything, but it seemed urgent. He was unsettled." Her lips curled into a slow smile. Perfect. Ryan was starting to feel the cracks in his perfect little world. "Did you catch any names?" she asked smoothly. Elise nodded. "A merchant named Callum. I believe he handles discreet transactions." A shadow passed over her face. She knew the name. Callum was infamous for helping powerful men cover up their dirty secrets. And if Ryan was meeting him in secret, he was trying to clean up a mess. Her mess. A thrill ran down her spine. She was getting to him. She dismissed Elise with a grateful smile and turned back to the window. The game was advancing faster than she expected. She needed to push further. The next morning, Ryan was distant. He moved through breakfast without meeting her gaze, and his usual smooth demeanour had been replaced with something sharper, more cautious. He was suspicious. Good. Selina arrived late, her usual bright smile intact. But when she leaned in to whisper something to Ryan, she noticed it. A hint of worry. Selina, too, was unsettled. Had they sensed it? The shift in the game? She placed her teacup down gently. "You both seemed troubled this morning," she murmured, tilting her head slightly. Ryan was the first to recover. He forced a smile, but she saw the tension in his jaw. "Just business, my love. Nothing to trouble yourself with." Selina laughed lightly. "You know men, always scheming." Ah, Selina. She knew now that the laughter was a lie. Selina had always been the mastermind, the one who whispered poison into Ryan's ears, the one who played the long game. But this time, she was 3 steps ahead of them both. She reached across the table and placed her hand over Ryan's, smiling sweetly. "Of course. I trust you completely." Ryan stilled for half a second before he relaxed. Good. Let him believe that, for now. That afternoon, she made her move. She arrived at Callum's establishment unannounced, dressed in a hooded cloak to conceal her identity. The scent of ink, parchment, and secrecy filled the air as she stepped inside. Callum looked up from his desk, eyes widening slightly before he composed himself. "My lady, what a surprise!" She lowered the hood, offering him a cool smile. "You met with my husband last night." Callum hesitated. "I handle many clients, my lady." She leaned forward, cutting him off. "Let's not play games, Callum. I know exactly why you were meeting him, and I know what kind of services you provide." His lips pressed into a thin line. "I want to know what Ryan is hiding," she said softly. "And I want to know now." There was a pause. Then Callum chuckled, shaking his head. "Lady Evelyn, you are full of surprises." She merely waited. Finally, he exhaled and slid a piece of parchment across the desk. "Your husband is in trouble. Financial trouble. He's been funneling money into a secret account, but it seems someone has been interfering with his transactions lately." A slow smile spread across her lips. That someone was her. She had been quietly rerouting funds, ensuring that his planned betrayal would never see fruition. Ryan was trying to fix the damage, but it was too late. "Who else knows about this?" she asked. Callum smirked. "No one. Yet." She reached into her cloak, pulling out a small pouch of gold and placing it on the desk. "Make sure it stays that way." Callum chuckled, pocketing the gold. "You, my lady, are far more dangerous than I imagined." She met his gaze, her smile unwavering. "You have no idea." That evening, she returned home to find Ryan pacing in his study, frustration evident on his face. He turned sharply when she entered, quickly masking his emotions. "Evelyn, you startled me." She walked toward him slowly, her expression soft. "You seem troubled, my love." He hesitated before shaking his head. "It's nothing, just some business dealings gone awry." She reached up, brushing her fingers against his jaw. "I hate to see you stressed." His muscles tensed under her touch. He was on edge, perfect. She leaned in closer, letting her voice drop to a whisper. "You can always tell me anything, Ryan." He swallowed, searching her face. And for the first time, he hesitated. The doubt was settling in. He was beginning to question everything. She smiled, pressing a soft kiss to his cheek before stepping away. "Get some rest, my love." As she left the room, she felt his eyes on her, filled with uncertainty. He could sense it now. Something was wrong. Something had changed, and soon he would realize that the prey had become the predator. The night was colder than usual, the wind carrying an eerie stillness as she stood on the grand balcony overlooking the city that once felt like her prison. But not anymore. Tonight, the game would end. Her heart beat steadily, her pulse slow and calculated. Every step, every move had led to this moment. Ryan and Selina had no idea what was coming. She turned at the sound of approaching footsteps. Ryan. His face was partially hidden in the shadows, but she could see the unease in his eyes. He was trying to mask it, but it was there. Good. He was starting to feel it, the shift, the loss of control. "You've been acting strange," he said finally, his voice quieter than usual. "It's like I don't know you anymore." She let a soft, almost sad smile touch her lips. "Perhaps you never did." Ryan stiffened. "What is that supposed to mean?" She sighed, stepping toward him, letting her fingers trail over the railing. "Tell me, Ryan, if you could go back and change something from your past, would you?" He hesitated, just for a fraction of a second, but it was enough. Regret. He was feeling regret. But it was too late for that now. Before he could answer, the door burst open, and Selina stormed in. "Evelyn!" she cried, breathless. "We have a problem!" Here we go." Ryan turned sharply to face her. "What's wrong?" Selina's eyes darted toward Evelyn, suspicion creeping into her gaze. "The investors. They've backed out. Every single one." Ryan's expression darkened. "What?" Evelyn watched in amusement as his world crumbled. The business empire he had built, The fortune he had stolen, the power he had once held, it was all gone. Piece by piece, she had taken it apart, and now he had nothing. Ryan turned toward her, realization dawning in his eyes. You did this." She tilted her head slightly. "Did I?" Selena's face twisted with rage. "You snake!" Evelyn laughed then, a soft melodic sound that sent chills down both their spines. "Oh, Selena, it's almost funny, isn't it? You betrayed me, you stole my life, you pushed me off a rooftop and left me for dead." Ryan flinched, the first crack in his confidence. She took a step forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. "And now? It's your turn to lose everything." Selena's breath hitched, her hand tightening into a fist. "You don't know what you're doing." Evelyn leaned in, her lips barely inches from Selena's ear. "Oh, darling, I know exactly what I'm doing." She stepped back just as guards entered the room. "Take them," she commanded, her voice steady. Ryan's eyes widened. "What? You can't—" "Oh, but I can," she interrupted smoothly. "You see, while you were busy trying to ruin my life, I was ensuring you would have no escape when the time came." Selena lunged at her, but the guards caught her easily. She struggled, her screams echoing through the hall. "Let me go. You can't do this." Evelyn met her gaze, her expression serene. "You did it to me first." Ryan fought against the guards, his voice turning desperate. "Evelyn, please. We can fix this. We can—" She raised a hand, silencing him. "The man who once called me love now begs for mercy." She sighed, shaking her head. "How tragic." Ryan clenched his jaw, fury flashing in his eyes. "I should have killed you." Evelyn smiled. "And that's why you lost." The guards dragged them away, their screams fading into the night. She turned back toward the balcony, inhaling deeply. It was over. The revenge, the pain, the long nights of planning. It had all led to this. And yet, as she stood there, staring at the city below, she felt something unexpected. Peace. For the first time in years, she was free. A small smile played on her lips as the wind caressed her face. She had won, and she would never be a victim again. The past was gone, the future was hers, forever.